I changed the subtitle a little bit. Originally it was Commercialization, but I felt this is more punchy and less coherent. So, yeah. So let me take you on a rather chaotic journey with this talk. So I will start off with definitions. Then we take a little bit of a history detour into the Enlightenment. We explore how crypto enables new types of products. And then we double into commerce as well. And then at last, we will be able to put it all together for you to understand how I think of DeSci culture. So, yeah, I would like to break down the buzzword of DeSci to understand the meaning of it, separating the D and the Sci. And I want to start with science because many use science today as there's some that use science as a religious invocation, like science is settled on this. And in my opinion, that's counterproductive and potentially dangerous, and potentially goes against what I believe in, and maybe others in the room too. So what is science? And I like to settle the definition for purpose of this presentation. And I'll be relying on David Deutsch's high-level framing as a science, as a quest for better explanations, rather than set of ultimate truths. You know, science has supercharged human explanatory power and gave rise to rapid expansion of knowledge and innovation. And I do believe that knowledge is infinite, and that new knowledge that explains the world better replaces the old knowledge. So there are no ultimate truths. It's a quest. It's ever evolving, and nothing is settled. So moving on to the D part of the DeSci, and I like to lovingly refer to the D part as degen rather than decentralized. Degen in the best sense possible. So redefining degen as someone who gambles on the outcome of scientific experiment. So it's gambling as tinkering. And trying new things. You know, the knowledge is not ultimate truth, that we said before. So gambling is an inseparable part of unlocking new knowledge. And I have this picture in mind of this Victorian era independent scientist tinkerer like Michael Faraday, who was degening by not shying away from a risky experiment that, you know, oftentimes he was funding himself, as these independent scientists did. And this was before the government took on a major role of becoming a sponsor of science, or academia, if you will. So yeah, if we put it together, I like to frame DeSci as experimental quest for better explanations. And you know, maybe science today, represented by academia, has gone too far from the original pioneering days of Michael Faraday, of the Enlightenment, when it attracted more risk-taking characters who had passion for knowledge-seeking, with some of their opinions very controversial. And you know, today science is pretty much governed by politics and rules, which we could say in a way could constrain the ability to find new knowledge. And it tries to foster too much obedience, in a sense. Whereas when we look at the origins of the OG science in the Enlightenment, it was mostly about a desire to make it that as much as possible people are not ruled. So in a sense, it fostered disobedience, but a civil one. So not an anarchy. So let's have a look at this OG science. And Enlightenment was very critical for producing rapid innovation in a very concentrated period of time, and this happened largely in Great Britain, or maybe the Anglosphere, if you will. And the question, why Britain exactly? Why were they so proficient in, you know, producing that much knowledge and innovation in such a concentrated period of time, starting with Newton all the way to Industrial Revolution? And again, I'll be relying on David Deutsch's explanation. So he posits that British Enlightenment was a revolt against authority, but it was not a utopian one. It was very practical. It was look at this kind of evil monarch whose rule is justified by this ultimate truth, and replace it with something more practical. So it was not replacing it with another ultimate truth. It was more of a practical approach that there's a problem and how do we fix it. And their method was basically slowly extending privileges that were not available for the majority, but only to a few of specific privileged class. So, in a sense, it was productization of ready-made set of civil liberties that were then extended, and people were adopting them. So it was almost liberalism as a service. Whereas, we're in Berlin today. In Germany, it was a bit different. Largely in continental Europe, it was a bit different. It was their revolutions were mostly nested in sort of utopian tradition, and it was about abolishing the tyrant. And so basically, they tried to replace one ultimate truth with another. So we're gonna set up these. We're gonna write up these fundamental new rules that we're gonna enforce. We're gonna get these institutions to watch over them, and then it becomes very, very inflexible. And it's mostly rooted in power and obedience, rather than sort of controlled disobedience that we've seen in the Great Britain. So I wanted to compare the two. So Brits never took part in abolishing, at least domestically. And they were producing rapid change without any sudden revolution or extremism. So in 1920s and 1930s, when totalitarianism took over Europe, it never really became popular in the UK or in Great Britain. It didn't have a popularity in the British political culture. But in Europe, in continental Europe, since it was based on abolitionism that is rooted in power, here they were prone to making people obedient at all costs. And that's why totalitarian regimes were pretty popular over here. Yes, but obedience is not great in producing knowledge and innovation. And it seems that controlled disobedience seems to be very productive in terms of knowledge generation. So science, in my opinion, should never be subject to obedience. I mean, anything should go if it obeys the rule of physics and mathematics. So when I talk disobedience, I want you to think about like, not a child that is testing the limits of the world around it and not like something criminal. So yeah, how does this sort of relate to DeSci? So potentially there could be a similar problem that we're facing to the Great Britain during the Enlightenment. So there's a problem of certain people and institutions holding certain privileges, and how do we fix this problem? How do we extend privileges held by credentialed few to more people? So the question is, can we allow more people to deploy markets? Can we allow them to commercialize research, fractionalize IP, making it more open and not as dependent on public funding and potential political biases? So in general, can it be less dependent on power? And yeah, so we're leveraging blockchain or permissionless systems, which in a sense is also like a ready-made set of privileges that can be extended. So that's very much related to social scalability. So you can scale either via power, so institutions, or via technology and markets. And maybe we could start relying a bit more on technological social scalability rather than relying on too much obedience. And yeah, so we're in DeSci, people say they leverage crypto, and what is crypto and how can we even further leverage crypto? So from today's perspective, it looks like an unlikely couple, right? What on earth even is crypto and Web3? Because it's pretty difficult to explain, and I want to talk about products of crypto. I lately read a article called Volatility as a Service that posits that crypto products and culture is relying on volatility to be relevant and to become and stay relevant. And the most important takeaway is that volatility is crypto's feature and not a bug. So and I always, we always try to define what Web3 means. There are different attempts and different formulas and different definitions. But according to this, I would frame it as, Web3 as a state of mind of an internet user that comes for the volatility, but stays for the network. So rather than Web3 being a place or a web page, it's a state of mind of an internet user. And speculation is a powerful wedge, but science is a serious thing, right? So it should deliver serious results. So what's the product of crypto? What's the utility beyond going up and down? And yeah, in my opinion, culture is the product, and this is pretty complicated. Bear with me. So we talked about disobedience, right? Extending rights. We talked about speculation a little bit, and now we're going into commerce. So, I mean, what am I talking about? So this might sound a bit hand-wavy, but I read this article called Life After Lifestyle, or an essay, and it discusses how commerce has changed. After 2008, after the financial crisis, millennials, they rejected aspirations, and everyone became a barista. And now suddenly, with Gen Z, everyone wants a private jet and everything. So whereas before it was about rejecting aspiration, now it's about very obvious aspiration. So even sugar water is about aspiration. So social media rapidly changed the culture, it's the aspiration culture that we see, TikToks and influencers, it has been about products and brands sort of inserting themselves into the cultural relevance through these influencers and memes. And basically the thesis of this Life After Lifestyle is that we're entering a period where sort of bottom-up brand culture will take place. So we're going to enter an era of co-creation where sort of brands are part of the culture. So culture is a product, and everything else is auxiliary. So the actual products are auxiliary. So you're not going to have people selling stuff top-down, but it's going to be more bottom-up emerging products. And when you think about ETH buying, Ethereum and buying ETH. You're very much buying sort of, ETH is selling block space, which is very much a Veblen good, because you've got plenty of block space going around, but people want ETH, right? They bet on the future of conspicuous consumption of Web3 happening on Ethereum, and maybe buying ETH is not as different as buying Nikes. In the last 10 years or so, social media have inserted this aspiration layer between the consumer or the observer and product, and change the culture. And now crypto Web3 will transform by layering on attribution. So the former was represented by influencer, and now the hallmark of the new consumer era, hopefully, will be tokenized culture. Culture and its products owned by these online tribes. And we can see that memes are already traded. They're a product that you can buy. So buying into these tokens fundamentally is not different from buying a product from a brand. Because products of conspicuous consumptions are always a promise or expectations of something, right? It's like, feeling, you're selling feeling of something or looking like something. So are tokens and memes that different? So in a sense, tokens could redefine what a product could be and enable consumers, us, to directly purchase culture as a product. So, yeah. tokens do not only redefine what a product could be. So besides a meme and culture that you can buy directly, they also represent a product vision, right? So there's a narrative that aims at delivering something. So EAT is selling block space, HerdDAO is selling a dream. There's always a vision. So tokens are also a novel form of online organization that enable rapid global capital formation. They enable co-creation with attribution, so you get social recognition, and then you can route financial value to the origination point of ideas. They align incentives, so they create a sort of cohesive microeconomic unit, and they also serve as a governance proxy. So all of this could potentially transition us from UGC, as in user-generated content, to UGP, user-generated products. But it all starts with culture. And now, finally, at last, we can, I believe that DeSci could take part in the UGP, user-generated product side of things. And it's time to wrap it all up, sort of, in this unserious meme. As I talk about the culture, the DeSci culture, it's maybe good to finally explain what I expect or what I hope the DeSci culture would become. So, the question for knowledge can be messy, and it's messy. And as I said at the beginning today, I feel science is often referred to as a religious invocation. Well, science is this, right? And my hope is that DeSci can potentially, sort of help science rediscover its rebellious spirit and gets closer to people with whose encounter with science today is mostly like someone with authority citing a paper. So science doesn't have to always be only this distant authority that tells me that I'm wrong or that I don't know anything. It doesn't have to be distant. So in crypto, or probably in IT in general, the frontier is relatively close, right? So you don't need to have, you can drop out of college and influence society by starting Microsoft or Apple or Ethereum, Uniswap, right? The frontier is very close, but in biotech, for example, you need to at least get a PhD to have some basic level credentials. Perhaps a sign that the frontier is not that close and it's pretty far away, and maybe when you get it, you arrive at the frontier, you realize that not much is going on. So I do hope that DeSci could kind of help bring in more people into research, find novel ways how to find research and for sort of pleb to participate in the research. So yeah, I would say that DeSci culture, in my opinion, should be fostering disobedient, yet civil, quest for infinite knowledge. Yeah, thank you.